Hi, everybody, and welcome to 13 Now. I'm News 13's Amy Hoyt. We're coming to you from our downtown studios in Panama City. On the 13th of every month, as you know, it is Buddy Check Day, where we remind women to check for lumps in their breast. And of course, if you find one, you should go straight to your doctor. Also, a part of our commitment on this day is to bring you guests, people who have actually gone through the process from diagnosis to treatment to surviving breast cancer. And we have a special guest with us today. You may recognize her. Katie Patronis, good to see you today.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me today.
All right, you've been in the county a long time, have you? Were you born here?
I was born in Tennessee, but I've been in Bay County my whole life.
Most of your life, yeah, I figured. And out there selling real estate, business good?
Business is good. It's been a very active market, and it's definitely a lot of demand, and so we're enjoying the prosperous market.
Oh, good. Well, that's good news to start with. Let's talk about your breast cancer diagnosis. It was 4 years ago.
Correct. It was in 2018. I was going for my first mammogram. I turned 40 years old and knew that I needed to get a mammogram, and so I scheduled my first mammogram.
So you didn't find a lump on your own?
I did not, no. No.
Okay, so take us through the process. You go in thinking nothing's going to happen. It's the first time you've ever done this. What was the experience at that point?
Well, I went in and did my mammogram, and of course was nervous, didn't know what to expect, just because it was the first time I'd ever been through that procedure. And then I was called a few days later to come back in for additional screening. And so, in addition to the mammogram, they did an ultrasound on my breast, and then had me do an additional mammogram, so really just additional screening. And
Did they already say to you, hey, we think we see something?
they did, yes. They said, we found something that looks abnormal, and so we'd like for you to come back in and again do the ultrasound, which is not something that they normally do. They normally just do the mammogram, but because they found an area that they were concerned about, then they did the additional screening at the doctor's office.
Were you shocked that they made you come back?
I was not really. I felt like that was probably normal to because again, it's just a small speck, and I really wasn't very nervous about it at first. It was only when they told me that I needed to go have a biopsy of my breast at the hospital that I started to get a little more nervous, and because that was an additional procedure, additional screening, and so I started to feel a little bit more nervous at that point.
Does it run in your family at all?
It does not.
So you weren't expecting?
No history on my mom's side of the family, and on my dad's side of the family, I was the first female born into the family in 50 years. So
Wow.
not probably a lot of history that's known there, but no known history in my family.
All right, so what happens with the biopsy?
So I had the biopsy done, and then again, the surgeon asked us to come back to his office in about a week, and so me and Jimmy both went there together. And while we were there, he let us know that they finished the biopsy, looked at the results, and that it was in fact cancer. And so that was very scary, and to hear that word, and I was thankful that we were there together. And,
Right, of course. Talking about your husband, of course.
Sure, yes, absolutely. I've been known to go to doctor's appointments by myself from time to
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, it's always good to take them for something like that.
Sure.
You got to have that support.
Absolutely.
All right, so what's your reaction? Do you get emotional? I mean, I think I would be.
Yes, I was very emotional. I think my husband Jimmy was much more emotional. I was trying to be strong and felt optimistic, and then the diagnosis was tough, but the prognosis was good. The surgeon told me that he handed me the booklet, the American Cancer Society booklet, and told me that I had stage 0 DCIS is the type of cancer which is in your duct, and so I didn't know that was even existed, and so obviously it was the best case scenario considering the circumstances.
So do they go in and surgically remove it?
Yes. So at that time, he told me, the surgeon said, you will need to have a lumpectomy. You will need to have this area removed. And because you caught it early, but it is most likely would spread. And so you want to have it removed as soon as possible. And so that was the recommendation was to have a lumpectomy.
Are you in the hospital room here in this picture?
That is actually right after my lumpectomy at Moffitt in Tampa. So once they told me that I was going to need to have the surgery, I felt like I should go to a hospital where they specialize in breast oncology. And so I started researching and looking at different options, primarily in Florida. And there are a lot of good options right here in our state for breast oncology. And I ended up deciding to go to Moffitt. And so we scheduled my surgery so I went to Moffitt, and they took all of my records, and I, went to the hospital, and they, gave me everything that they had as far as all the screenings that were done and the biopsy, and gave me that information to share with Moffitt. And so I went and had an initial visit, and they scheduled my lumpectomy for October 10th of 2018.
Oh, October 10th, the day that will live in infamy for Bay County. So now you're down there and you know that your hometown is about to get hit with a hurricane. That couldn't have helped.
It was definitely, we had to come up with a plan B. We planned to leave our two little boys here in Panama City while we went to Tampa, and so I could have the surgery and come back. I was only going to be in the hospital for 24 hours, so we were planning to let them stay here. And then with the tropical storm headed our direction, we started to realize that we needed to come up with another plan. And so we decided to bring them along to Tampa because that was going to be the safest place to be out of harm's way. And I have a dear friend in Tampa, and they were able to stay with her.
Okay, so you have the family taken care of. How did you tell the boys, or did you?
We did not tell them initially because they were so young, and the C word is scary, and we thought especially scary for such young children. And so we ended up, they came to pick me up that next morning at the hospital with Jimmy, and we told them then, and but we let them know that it was removed, and that they found something that they felt like was cancer, but that I had a lumpectomy and it was removed, and so that was the good news. And they also, while I had the lumpectomy, they did a biopsy on my lymph node area to make sure that was there were nothing to be concerned about there.
So you didn't need chemo or radiation or anything else?
So when I left the hospital, my doctor, he said, you do not need chemo. He said radiation. He said you could, as a, preventative protection, you could have the radiation. He said, but I'm not going to tell you that you have to have the radiation. And so he said, what I would do is when you get home, I would try to meet with a doctor that, a radiologist, and learn more and make a decision. Well, when we got home, there were
Right.
I was calling, and I couldn't nobody was picking up the phone. And so, of course, I thought, well, maybe this is a sign. So, I could have traveled to Destin to have the radiation. But again, I knew it was going to be hard on my body. And so thankfully I did not, because we were able to do the lumpectomy, and I found it so early, which is, definitely I recommend going and get a mammogram, as soon as you turn 40. That was my, definitely made my situation a lot easier.
And I want to ask you about that too, because some of us who will remain unnamed waited till after they were 40. And that happens a lot to get that first mammogram because you think, I'm so young, it's not in the family, but you were so smart to go ahead and do it. I mean, do you recommend that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's not something you want to put off because we all know that cancer spreads very quickly. And, so many people have a much tougher story and have found cancer at stage 2 or 4, and the battle is a lot harder to fight. And so I strongly recommend having that mammogram right away. And I've heard that if you have it in your family, they recommend having it even earlier. So it's just, never too early to be checked.
And there's so many different kinds of breast cancer now. that it's crazy. It's kind of hard to know all of it until you get your diagnosis. And you're 4 years clear now, right? You got your checkup?
That's correct. Yes, I went 6 months after the surgery, and now I go every year. In addition to the mammogram, they also do an MRI, and so that's an additional screening that is, trying to just be very careful to be sure that there's nothing else to be concerned about.
All right. And of course, if you don't know, Jimmy Patronis, the state CFO, and of course from Bay County, is Katie's husband. And I remember him, the first time we talked to him after the storm. Now, you've just gone through this. You come back, Hurricane Michael has hit, and he was so emotional. And I said, man, this guy, and we knew already, but he loves his wife. It was hard on the spouse.
I will tell you that going through a campaign is very emotional. The good days are really good, and the bad days can be, tough. And so, adding the diagnosis of breast cancer on top of a campaign, because he was, just a couple months away from Election Day, and then a Category 5 hurricane, it was, truly unique. But we, thankfully, we kept our faith, and we stood strong as a family, and did our best to keep everything together.
Yeah, I'm sure it was hard. Did your faith play a role in getting you through?
Absolutely. Yes, it made all the difference in the world. I always had a positive outlook. I always felt like everything was going to be okay. It was just, something that so many people have to deal with, and a lot more common than I realized until I had that diagnosis, because you hear, people reach out, and I was able to reach out to friends and people that had been through it, and it was wonderful to have that support.
And that makes a big difference, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Did you have any friends or family members, well, not immediate family, but who may have been diagnosed at a younger age that could give you information, or were you just kind of, this was a first and you were on your own?
It really was a first as far as, finding it so early, and I did not know anybody who had a lumpectomy. I knew, a few people who actually had a mastectomy because they were concerned, because they did have, just a small area, and they didn't want to continue to have problems. So they felt like that was a better long-term solution than the lumpectomy. So I didn't have a lot of, personal experiences with people who have dealt with it, but certainly once I found out, there were a lot of people who reached out to me, and I realized that I did, there were people in the community that had gone through what I had been through or was going through.
Right. So now you're the mentor. Do people ask you questions?
Yes, absolutely. I have people reach out to me through Facebook Messenger or, other ways, and ask for advice. And, you just are so thankful that they're comfortable to reach out, because, sharing your story gives them a little ease and a little peace of mind.
Right. And I'm sure you can answer questions that those of us who haven't been through it can't really answer. There's nothing like that experience. Well, we are so glad that you're healthy, and we appreciate you for coming in and sharing your story, especially at such a young age. We appreciate you so much. We're glad you're 4 years clear. Now, what do you do this next year? There's a 5-year all clear kind of thing.
They have not as soon as I finished my appointment just a couple weeks ago, they scheduled my appointment for next year. So I'm not sure if when I go back next year, they'll tell me to, that I don't have to come back in a year. But I'm perfectly happy going every single year for the rest of my life, if that's what it takes to give, the peace of mind to do that screening, because I believe that the screening is critical. There was a real estate broker who lost her battle with cancer, and she, when I talked to her, she told me, she said, screening is the best thing you can do. And
it's
she
key.
said, she had cancer in other areas and didn't realize it. So definitely, the screening is key.
Early detection saves lives.
Yes, absolutely.
Best advice you have for women.
Get a mammogram. Go and don't put it off. Go get your mammogram as soon as it's time, and make sure you do it as often as your doctor recommends.
Well, we sure appreciate you coming out and sharing that story, touching a lot of lives today.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Katie.
you.
Thanks, everybody, for watching. Ladies, check for lumps. And you don't have to wait until the 13th, but it's just a good day for us to get that reminder out there to you. So that's why we do it. Thanks again for watching. This is 13 Now. I'm Amy Hoyt. We'll see you next time.